Hi there! Welcome back to the Rare Book Views channel, where I talk about how much I love reading and books and collecting and just enjoying a good library, including my own. And today I have great news. I finished the To Be Read shelf. This is the second time that I've taken a bunch of books and said, I'm reading you guys first, because I get into this habit. I think most people do this. I think a lot of us readers are guilty of buying books that we're mean to read, but then you buy new books, and the new acquisitions look more exciting, and so you read those first and then it continues. So I have had some books that I'm starting to feel a little bit of pressure to read because I've had them for a long time. So I did this once, and it was really great because I can still buy a book, but it doesn't go, I'm reading this batch first, and it just gives you the greatest sense of accomplishment when you're done. It feels great. And I have a little bit of room. So I can tell you all about what I read. I read kind of a lot of books. I think it was 7 weeks to finish, and I did along the way read 2 books from the library, so a couple extras. In no particular order. I read The Runner's Guide to the Meaning of Life by Amby Burfoot. This is a great quick read on some fun topics. Amby is a really great writer, and he was an amazing runner. I love running and reading, so I love books about reading. If there's anyone else who is a runner reader, let me know. I have a whole collection of running books, so I could show you that sometime if you'd be interested. This one I really enjoyed. It was a quick read. It's also it occurred to me this would be a great stocking stuffer if you have a runner that you need to get some Christmas presents for. He even has in here, should have marked the page, he had a couple suggested books for runners, and they really run the gamut of classics to books about running. Maybe I'll read them next. This is a good one. My sweet husband bought this for me an embarrassing number of years ago. He bought me 2, and I put one on this To Be Read shelf, and I think I'll do the next one on one in the next set. This is Romeo and Juliet as Choose Your Own Adventure, and I don't know why. I just never really got around to it, and I finally did it. So this is a fun read. It is a summary of the true story with other options built in. So I enjoyed it. A little too much swearing for my taste, but it did have a couple of fun sort of side stories that you could get into. I thought were pretty fun. There was one that the nurse is in one of those sort of 1980s style computer narrative games where something is happening and then you can leave the courtyard or turn left or whatever. And I thought that was really fun. So it was an interesting storytelling technique, and I enjoyed it. By Ryan North. The companion book to Victoria. This was great. There was a similar book for another series, and it might have been Downton Abbey. It was definitely one of these. It's a PBS masterpiece, but it's also a BBC series, and they have beautiful things about the production of the show, but also history and really fun ephemera and visuals. This was a great read. This is by Daisy Goodwin and Sarah Sheridan, so one of the show writers and another person. This is great. I did not know how good this was going to be, and this is one of those, I have had a copy of this for so long that I upgraded the quality of the copy and still had not read it. This is Nathaniel Hawthorne's Wonder Book, illustrated by Arthur Rackham, who's one of my favorites. He's so great. And the illustrations are beautiful. It's a vintage copy, so these are great, high quality. These are tipped in where it's actually an illustration that is done separately and then pasted onto the page. And these are retellings of Greek myths for a young adult audience, so right up my alley. This was my reading level. The Greek myths elude me. They're a little bit challenging. So this was really fun because I didn't realize that's what it was going to be, and just wonderful. Super fun to read. Illustrations are amazing. I have 2 books for the Halloween season that I've been saving. Ghosts and Witches by Wentworth Day. This, interestingly, was published by Batsford in England. I enjoy the concept. There's some problematic language in this book. There's a couple things that are not necessary for the story or to move anything forward, or that really add anything and are just gratuitous, offensive language. It is an interesting book of ghost stories that have been gathered from the area, but there's a little bit anyways, the Amityville Horror. Am I saying this right? Probably not. Let me know if you have suggestions how to pronounce this. I think this is an early edition. The copyright page, it has a 4 on the number line. I think this is a 4th printing. Okay, I expected this to be really scary. I'm a fraidy cat. It's Halloween season. I thought this would be rough for me. Did not scare me. It really seemed like these people made a bad real estate buy and are now trying to explain to you how. I just can't find it believable that ghosts would be this random. Anyways, also this book is falling apart. I discovered when I started reading it that it's coming out like the glue is giving, which should have added to the creepiness. It did not. I think I might donate this one. Let me know. What do you think? It's a readable copy. It's not a book that I loved. It's probably not one that I would read again. And it's not in great condition, so I don't think this is saleable. Should I donate it? Let me know. Clive Cussler. Okay, Sahara is one of these movies that I have watched many times with my husband. We enjoy it. It's one of those movies that gets a lot of replay in our household. We find it just the right, when you're in the right mood, it is perfect. It is silly. The acting is fine. The plot is good. It has really a great music soundtrack. It is visually pleasing, and it does not take a huge amount of mental work to keep up with the plot. So I have never read the book, and I thought it would be fun. I got this for $3 at a book sale. It's a good book. It is so much, I mean, it's pretty long. It was so much more complicated than the plot in the movie. They did a lot of editing to make that into the normal story arc for a movie, the 3-act kind of thing. This has a lot more side subplots, a lot more action. Clive Cussler is in it, in the character in the book, in a very small but pivotal role. I did not see that coming. There is, interestingly, references to the Civil War, and I don't want to give this too much away, but there is a plot point in the book that is not in the movie. It's a bit shocking. And I just wonder what the meeting was like where the writers tried to decide, should we take this out, leave it in? Let's take it out. But I enjoyed the book quite a bit. And I think it will help me enjoy the movie even more. I think definitely watch the movie before you read the book. I think, in this case. V.E. Schwab. The Invisible Life of Elle LaRue, I think, is the book that I read by her before. I was thrilled to find this. I paid $2 for it at a charity bookshop. I did not know that she had this as a trilogy, and I got the first one at a bargain price. Enjoyed it thoroughly. I'm going to look forward to hunting for and reading the rest of them. This is the next book in this series for me. This is one of those great things. I love finding a series where a bunch of books already exist and you can just read them and they're just waiting for you. You don't have to wait for the next one to come out. This is a book imagining if Sherlock Holmes had a sidekick who, instead of Watson, is a woman, and there's a whole bunch of different subplots that go on because of that pairing and team up. This has a funny premise of the author has a backstory for why she wrote these books and how she received this mysterious trunk with all these things in it, and that she's just telling you about what was in the trunk and what was in the manuscripts in the trunk, and she's not really writing these stories at all. And I enjoy that. I think it's a fun context. I think Laurie King did a great job. So I was really excited to find the next one in this book. Confusingly, it is not chronologically the next book. If anyone reads this series, tell me if I'm doing this right. I'm reading them in the order that they were published, but this one is as if you kind of went along and then the author says, oh, by the way, I forgot to give you this story from in here. So if is there a different way, a different order I should be reading them in? What do you think? Stick with the chronological? Please tell me. Okay. This was a great find. This is a book illustrated by Pauline Baynes, who illustrated the Chronicles of Narnia, and I love the Chronicles of Narnia. I think they're a fun book to reread at Christmas, and I enjoy illustrators, but I try not to get too heavily invested in collecting books by all the illustrators that I like, because where would they go? So this one, I got a great bargain price, so I decided it was fine. But it's one of those books that I had it for a long time, and it was waiting to be read. St. George and the Dragon. I vaguely know the story behind this. I have been to a place in Greece that claims they are the setting of one of the key parts of the story. And I've had this for a while. This is one of those ones that lingered on a shelf. I did not know, I'm happy to admit to you my ignorance, I did not know that this is part of The Fairy Queen by Edmund Spenser. I love classics. I enjoy reading classics. Sometimes reading a classic is an investment, and it's not. It just takes longer and more brain power than reading modern fiction. The Fairy Queen, I read it in high school, and it was hard on a lot of levels. It's one of those things that it was poetry and not in modern English. So any version you read now is mildly confusing because we had to translate into modern English, and then the poetry, the rhyming scheme and the syllables don't quite work out. So depending on the translation you're reading, it's either in really good modern English or in really good poetry form, but not both. So I did not know that this was from that. And this translation, it was good. It was still kind of rough. It was still kind of hard to keep up with exactly what was going on, even though I know the story just from, I don't know, osmosis. I don't think I've ever read it before. The illustrations are beautiful. This is totally worth a read if you ever get a chance to get this copy. It's adapted by Sandal Stoddard Warburg, and it is published by Houghton Mifflin of Boston, and the copyright page says 1963. If you can track down a copy, definitely read it. I just saw looking through this is hilarious. Ages 10 and up. As a 10-year-old, I would not have read this. This is one that has been on the shelf for a while, and I think it needs a broad art, so maybe I'll set it aside. Poetry illustrated by Edward Gorey. I love Edward Gorey. And this time of year, he's so great. His stuff is slightly creepy and weird. I love everything about him. You Read to Me, I'll Read to You by John Ciardi, drawings by Edward Gorey. A lot of these are really fun. It says it's an 11th printing. I don't think that's very early, but the poems are really fun, and I found this obviously at a book sale and did not pay much for it. It's a good bargain. I think that one needs a broader also. Oh, and The Twits by Roald Dahl. Who has even heard of this one? It is so strange. A friend of mine found this rummaging through book sales and saved it for me. So this cost $2 and is a first U.S. edition, and it is weird. I just love Roald Dahl. What a great guy. His stories, he does not care. This, in my mind, he just does not care if anyone likes it. He does not care if this fits with what we expect from children's books or books in general. He really is in this weird, he is often writing, it seems like these are for children or young adults, but I think that if you were a young adult, this would totally freak you out. I just think it's not quite right for kids. Or I'm just not remembering that when we were kids, we read things that were really strange and it just kind of seemed fine. But reading this as an adult is a trip. I recommend it highly. This one also is going to need a broader, right? It's first edition. Another Pauline Baynes. The Joy of the Court. This is illustrated by Pauline Baynes. This is another one that I got. I think I got this at a book auction there's a book auction that I go to. Sometimes you buy things by the shelf, so you don't really know, you don't have time to really concentrate that hard on exactly all the books in it, so it's always a surprise. This one's published by Thomas Y. Crowell Company of New York and is dated 1971. It has a 1 on the number line, so I'm pretty sure this is the first edition. This is Pauline Baynes, but it's a slightly different style than the other illustrations I'm used to. It almost looks like paper cut figures, but there are some that are obviously drawn or painted on as well. So it's kind of a fun mixed media, really fun read. This was an easy one. This is like a classic that's easy read. The Story of John Tenniel. I love Alice in Wonderland, and I have a pretty good Lewis Carroll collection, and I think John Tenniel is fascinating. I've read in different biographies and different nonfiction that Lewis Carroll and John Tenniel did not get along, and this is one also that I got at a book auction and sort of set it aside and then just never really sat down to read it. It's really interesting, and it does talk about some of those little nooks and crannies of Alice in Wonderland and how it was produced and how John Tenniel ended up getting that job and how he sort of became known for that and how it really was a landmark work. There's a lot of examples of his work in here, sort of different illustrations that he did at different times. So I enjoyed that. I really love collecting special editions of books that I remember reading as a kid. I like to have a hardback or an early edition or something special. Sarah Plain and Tall, I remember this from elementary school. This was a reading time book that the teacher read to us, and it is weird. This is just a hardback. I didn't have a copy, and someone picked this up for me. And it is a weird story. This is about a farmer back in the day, I want to say 50s, who lost his wife and sent away for a mail order bride. Kind of weird premise. It's a very sweet book. It's very touching. So I'm glad that I finally had a chance to reread this since my youth. 1, 2, 3. So we got 3 that need broad art covers. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 15 books, 2 from the library. So 17 books in 7 weeks, I think. That's pretty good. I feel like I'm making plenty of time to enjoy my reading as well as going out and collecting. Oh gosh, I just thought, which one was my favorite as a read? That is often heavily influenced by what's going on in your life when you're reading. And I think I read a couple of these on vacation, and I think that means that it makes them kind of stand out. But I think the Laurie King, this series, I really love this. This always makes me happy. So I think this was my favorite of the batch. I just feel so good about some of these I've had for a long time, and I've really finally sat down and read them. So I feel good about that. I would love to hear, how do you read your books? Do you have some that stay on standby for a long time? Do you have a to-be-read shelf? Do you try to set things aside and set goals? I don't try to give myself a due date on this. I'm just trying to concentrate on one batch at a time. Let me know if you enjoy hearing what I think about the books that I read. I am probably going to set out on my next to-be-read shelf adventure, so that might be a video too. Thank you for watching. Thank you for all the support. People have sent some nice comments and been encouraging lately, and it really makes my day. So thank you for all of that. Thank you for watching. Happy reading.